Let's blow this up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Let's Blow This Up Live. It is episode 2 of this new live stream series. I am your host, Jason Sircone. I am joined by the one and only Jan Ditchfield. And Jan, before we even get started, I want to apologize. I told you I was going to have you off stage while I did your little brief intro. And then I started the theme music and realized I didn't remove you from the stage. So
I'm okay. It's great being here. I love the intro. I was like, nobody does intros better than podcasters, where you watch it and I'm always like, I want this. This is so fancy. It's beautiful.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you could join me. Like I said, I had talked to lots of people. Apparently, May 15th is a very busy night for a lot of people. So I'm glad you were able to make the time to join me this evening.
Oh, I always have time for you. So it's my pleasure.
Thanks, Jan. So we're going to dive into a lot of fun stuff tonight. We're going to kick things off talking a little bit more about you, because I think the audience deserves to know, who is Jan Ditchfield and what are you doing to change the world on a daily basis? Let us know.
Oh my gosh, that's a heavy question to ask. So I am Jan. I am an award-winning business strategist, and I specialize in helping really crazy ideas come to life that are actually make the world a better place. So I come from a 20-year career in the nonprofit sector, and I transitioned that into the online space. So I specifically work with women who have really deep subject matter expertise, and I help them be able to scale their businesses 6 figures and beyond, so that they can use that talent, that knowledge, that gift they have to make bigger impact in the world through business. So that's kind of what we do, is specialize in balancing out that idea of profit and passion. And so I don't believe in profit only business, and I don't believe in passion only business. I think that we have to come to that middle ground where there is both of those things are kind of working in balance, so that we can build sustainable business. So that's kind of me. I'm a podcast host. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm figuring the world out as I go along with it. I'm just Jan. That's who I
am. And you've done a lot. I just want to go backwards a little bit, because you said before you got into what you're doing now, you were working for charities, right? Or was it nonprofits? It was sort of the combination.
Both. It was both,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that world like when you made this transition? What was it like to go from what I'm sure was very hectic, very, very busy work lifestyle to maybe even more busy and hectic work lifestyle? What was it like making that leap?
Well, I made the leap. I left my career just before the pandemic hit. And for me, the decision to kind of walk away from my career was because I became a mom, and I had this life that just suddenly felt very unbalanced, where I was back into a very busy career. And my job has always been as a gun for hire. So I would be hired by charities that were struggling and failing. So I wasn't working in situations that were necessarily positive ones. I was brought in because something was really going wrong. So when things are going wrong, there's a lot of toxic environment going on. There's a lot of panic and a lot of high pressure to fix things quickly. And so that means long hours, a lot of stress, a lot of heavy selling, a lot of heavy lifting. And I was missing things like bedtime and the opportunities to just be present as a mom. So I kind of said, that's it. I'm done. I left my career in a blaze of glory. I am the person that you hear stories about. You're like, nobody really did that. And I did that. I literally stood up from my desk, put my laptop in my purse, walked out the door, kind of double fingered on my way, and I was done. I was like, that was it. And that was, at that point, that was well over $20 million that I had raised at that point, and a lot of awards I had won, and I done. I wanted something different. So starting the business initially was like, this is going to be easy. I can transition. And then the pandemic happened. And so I built my business during the pandemic with a 2-year-old at home. And so I think for me, like that move from what I did to what I do now, it was a different level of stress, but I find that the stress in this world is more manageable than the stress that I was in the other life. And I know that sounds odd, but I'm my own boss, and I think the passion that comes with that, and the relief that comes with that, because there's no glass ceiling over my head now. And so there was a lot of liberation that came out of just saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it work. And I've made it work. I don't know how sometimes, but it made it work. Yes.
I think we all have good quitting stories, so I have to follow up with that. Did you have that premeditated? Was there a thought in your mind of, I'm going in today and I am leaving guns a-blazing, or is this just, you know what,
No,
now's the time
it
I
was
gotta go?
yeah, it was the quitting story that nobody should repeat. It's the one I always say that when everyone's like, "Oh, I wanna do that." I'm like, "No, no, don't do that." There was no backup plan, there was no thought in it, and I'm not that way. I'm very meticulous in what I do. I'm a strategist, so I'm very much about make calculated decisions. Let's make don't be reactive, and it was purely wrong things said to me in the wrong moment, and I was like, "I'm done. That's it. You fix your
Yeah.
own problems," and out the door I went. It really was that spontaneous.
Did it take a moment for that to sink in? Because I know that, you've got all that adrenaline running when running through you when you make that type of move, and then all of a sudden it's, "Oh, shit,
Yeah.
I have to do the next thing." When did that kick in for you?
Oh, on the drive home.
Yeah, okay, so not
100%.
too long after the fact,
Yeah,
alright.
on the drive home. Yeah, it was. It was like, What did I just do?" Right? I have a mortgage, I have a family, like, I had a very good career, so I wasn't walking away from a tiny income. So it was a lot of, like, well, there's no backing out of this now, and I'm not gonna go back with my tail tucked between my legs, and I'm gonna figure it out. So I think
Mhm.
for me, one of the gifts maybe that I have is that I'm very determined to make things work, and I don't believe in failure. I believe in opportunity, and I believe that there's always ways to pivot and adjust and move forward. So I just walked in with my head down, and I was like, I'm going to make this business happen. I'm going to figure this world out. And coming into the online space was radically different for me, from what I came out of, and it's been a
Sure.
huge learning curve that, through the last 4 years of being here versus being in the real world. And I think that was the hardest part more than anything else, was just the different playing field. And I know business really, really well, but it's not the same here as it is out there. And that was the big thing that I had to adjust to.
What would you say, from when you first made that jump to where we are now, what's the biggest change that you've seen, whether it be through social media, whether it just be the online world as a whole? Where do you feel the biggest changes have taken place? Because we've all lived through an online world with COVID. We've all lived through the real world with COVID. But where have you seen the biggest changes from where you started to where you are today?
I think the biggest change has been transparency. And I think that more and more, especially more experts, like a lot of women, I work specifically with women in business, and a lot of us who left the real world, who we had, very high levels of education, a lot of clout behind us, a lot of understanding of things. And we walked into the online space and suddenly everything got diminished. A lot of things were dumbed down. We felt very insecure, very unsure of ourselves. The measures of success were really radically different than what we understood it to be. And we believed and bought into a lot of things that weren't necessarily the right things to believe and buy into. So bro marketing being the biggest one. I'm very anti bro marketing. I believe very strongly in ethical business, ethical principles, ethical selling. And so when we walked in and we kind of started to, we drank the Kool-Aid and we bought the courses and we did the things and we did the reels and we pointed all the stuff, and all of the results that we were promised didn't come. I think there's
Mhm.
been a big awakening that's happened within the online space where I don't think they were ready for so many experts to come into this world and be like, hang on, I'm going to call you out on this. And the calling out has been the thing that I think is the biggest shift, is the
Yeah.
pointing out of the unethical practices that exist in this space and how it's not okay. And it needs to be done differently, and it has to shift. And we need to go back to real purpose driven business, where
Mhm.
people are at the center and the heart of everything we do, regardless of whether we're real world or online. It needs to be about the consumer and caring for the people that we serve more than it is about caring for how much money we make at our business.
You really touched on something that rings true with me, because I mean, whether you define it as bro marketing, and I want to get your exact definition of that, because I think everybody probably looks at that a little bit differently, but I feel that you could not be more spot on with the fact that there are so many people out there that were able to take advantage just
Mhm.
because there was this opportunity that I have this stage, I have this thing to say, potentially monetize this, and where I have the backing to truly deliver results, it doesn't matter because no one else is either. And if you got wrapped up in the wrong person's web, you could have been taken down a very dangerous path where you spent a lot of money and wasted a lot of time to get no results. I love the fact that we're getting back slowly but surely to a world where more people, maybe not the algorithms yet, but more people individually are looking at social media for the social aspect and understanding that they have to be engaging with people, not engaging with algorithms, actually talking to people and making real relationships, because that's the world that we can thrive in. If we're not making real relationships, if it's all just this surface level bullshit, there's nothing to gain from that. And that, to me, to get the bro marketing out of this world has to be where it has to be front of mind for all of us. We have to be thinking about how we can reach out to the right people, make genuine, meaningful connections. I think this is probably, for me, why I gravitate to podcasting so much. And I'm sure, Jan, you would agree with me that podcasting gives you that opportunity. Live streaming gives you that opportunity. You get to have genuine conversations and really make a genuine connection with not just the person on the other side of the screen, but the people that are tuning in as well. So to everyone out in the Bomb Squad tonight, Jan and I are very happy to be here with you tonight. If you have any questions or comments you want to share with us, please be sure to drop them on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. They'll pop right up. I'll share them on the screen and we'll dig in. But while we're waiting for you in the viewing audience to make that move, Jan, tell us, what is bro marketing in your opinion?
So bro marketing, which first can be done by a man or a woman. So I think it's a bit of it's poorly named. I like to call it bra marketing when women do it. It really comes down to the intention behind the marketing act. So we're all marketers, right? We have to learn to do it. I've been doing sales since I was 16 years old. And I love selling. I think it's an art form. It's really important. It was a huge part of my career as a fundraiser was I had to make money. So you have to understand the psyche of people and how to tap into their heart and their why and how to be able to have that connection so that you can earn that right to ask them for money. The difference between being an ethical salesperson and being somebody who falls under bro marketing or bra marketing is the intention behind the behavior. So in my case, my intention when I'm selling is I'm selling to help. That's what I'm doing. When I was working in charity, I was doing it for hope. I was selling hope. That was my entire point. Let's hope, like together, you and I, we can fix this problem. Together, you and I, we can find a cure for cancer. We can get kids off the street. We can put people who don't have homes into housing. We can make a difference in the world. There is an outcome toward that is ethical, aligned, and centered. Bro marketing uses many of the same tactics, but they use it for their own individual outcomes, not for the outcome of the person they're serving. And that's where it switches. So if I say to you, if you give me $100, I can teach you how to, change your life and start a business that's going to be really profitable, but it's going to be hard work and it might not work the first time. And we might have some of these things we need to work through. That's ethical selling because I'm being transparent about everything in the process. It's not easy. Bro marketing, I can teach you how to make $100,000 in 15 minutes on your first launch. BS.
Right.
BS. You're false hope. Not possible. You're selling that notion of that dream that doesn't exist, right? And then that is all about how can we fill our funnel using things that are coercive, unethical, leaning into false hope, really leaning into pain points in people in a very nasty way to make people feel terrible about themselves so they make a purchase. All of those things, it's the intention behind the act. And that's the difference, again, between selling and learning to be really good at sales and bro marketing. So it's a really fine line, but it seems to be a line that the online space is the masters of, right? There is always leans the other way versus you see it all the time, like especially with women. You can run a business only working 3 days a week and you can be a full-time present mom and you can make $100,000 and then you buy into that and think it's possible. You try it, it doesn't work and you're a failure. When in reality, the message is wrong. It's not possible to do what's being said to you. There's a lot of privilege there. There's a lot of back experience that no one's admitting to. There's a lot of years of failure before someone got success. They're very little snippet stories in a much bigger story that they're choosing to share in order to take money from you. That's really what it comes down to. Sorry, I rant about this. I get very feisty.
No, it's fine. I think it's a great subject to talk about because the more people that are aware that this is out there and could potentially steer you the wrong direction, it's better to know up front, listen, you need to be finding the right people. And, you know, what you're explaining to me gives off a very strong MLM vibe. And maybe a lot of those people that transitioned from that MLM lifestyle went online, and this is what they knew. This is how they've sold their online product and all this nonsense. You know, I did it for a minute and hated it. It just wasn't me. It wasn't for me. I don't disparage anybody that's made it work. Like anybody that's been truly successful in network marketing, great job, good for you. That's phenomenal. I just never, it wasn't my style of selling. I remember when I was first told, first you get people over to your house, not telling them why they're coming, but when you get in there, then you start. I'm like, really? That doesn't sound right to me. So that, I think there's a lot of similarities there, because if you're doing that online too, and you're selling this big dream and you're showcasing this highlight reel of your own that's probably mostly fabricated and complete bullshit, then you're not doing it right. I think what that does for a lot of us that are on the ethical side is scorch the earth, because now we have to work harder to establish trust with someone so they're willing to give us the investment it takes to make those positive strides. I think a lot of people are they're just preconditioned to feel like they're going to get screwed. It's terrible.
Yeah. There's all kinds of tactics that are taught, and a lot of the tactics that are used are things like, that we would use in ethical selling anyway. But again, it's the intent behind it. And my favorite example always is on webinars. When you go into any webinar where you see a guru selling and they're doing things like, drop it in the comments or let me know how you feel, or doing that. Those are called trial closes. So what they're doing is they're trying to trial close to see who's responsive and who's warm. And you're training your brain to respond to cues is what it's doing. So they're doing the cues, and we're getting us to drop emojis doing that, because what they're trying to do is get the brain to start to listen to, every time I give you an instruction, you just respond rotely. And the next instruction I'm going to give you is click here to buy. And you just go click and you make a purchase without actually having a clear understanding of what you're getting into. So there's no consent within that purchase. It's very much, it's coerced. And that's one of the reasons why you'll see a lot of people who have huge refund rates, or a lot of, again, the screenshot, right, in their Stripe accounts that they show are just, it's not the refunds they're showing, it's the sales. But if you saw the actual bottom line, you'll see there's a big discrepancy between the sale and the refund. And it's because many people who are making those purchases have been coerced into the purchase, and they're not making it through like I have made an informed decision that this is the right thing for me. And so when we learn to sell ethically and we do things differently, there's a completely different process behind it, which is better for our business. So that's why I'm so against tactics like that, because of the fact that it's bad. It's a bad look. First of all, it does not serve anybody. And also you're not going to make as much money as you think you are, because you're going to be giving a lot of money back to people. So it's a completely different way to do things in business. And we just don't talk about it because we believe that this is the norm, because this is what online does. So therefore we should do it. And it's sad, actually.
No, I feel like, again, us talking about this, we're just scratching the surface. I feel like more people need to be having these types of conversations, because we live in a world where, not to the fault of anyone, it's just so spam driven. They're so scam driven as well. And not that everybody has bad intentions. It just may be that they have a very different way of selling that some may look at as unethical. Some people may respond to that, which is why they keep moving forward. But when you think of the grand scheme of things, what you're trying to accomplish, when I look at this as an entrepreneur, you're trying to build a community, and you're trying to build people that want to be there because they understand they're going to have the transformation that they're looking for, whatever that transformation may be. They're going to experience that because they trust you to get them from point A to point B. That takes a little bit of time and a little bit of nurturing. If somebody's just clicking a button to buy on the spot, you have to question what their motives are, and are they going to be a good member of your community? Because they just may be in it to get something real quick, and chances are those results, because they didn't come quickly, they bow out, and which is why they say that. I don't know the exact statistic on this, but I've heard that so many people purchase online courses and books that they never crack the cover of, they never dive into, they never complete, because I think they're taking little bits and pieces and trying to implement it and get this fast result. And then when it doesn't come, oh, you're the bad guy. You sold me something. You sold me a bill of goods. This is never going to work. I knew it was wrong. Now all of a sudden I'm in this position where I don't think anything will work. Yeah. And it makes it harder. And I go right back to what I said before. The rest of us have trouble because the earth is scorched. And now we're trying to get people to rebuild that trust and to ultimately trust the system, so they'll come and actually do business with people that are ethical.
Yeah, it's true. It's actually, I think it's 11% of the people who purchase online courses finish them. And so if you think of it from the other perspective, right, like that's huge, that the failure rate, and the amount of money that people invest in it. And it is the same. It's like a lot of the women I work with, by the time they come to me, they've been through those systems and they're not coming to me in good spots. Many of them, like I'm not the person you come to when things are going really, really well in your business. I'm kind of the other side of the coin. And so the damage that comes with that goes far beyond just, I spent a lot of money. I think there's a severe emotional damage that comes through it. There's a lot of psychological damage that comes through, and the confidence, especially with when you know your expertise, like you know your subject matter and you have proof of that and it worked in a different world, and you come in here and you're like, but why can't I get footing? Why is this not working for me? And it plays with your head. There's a lot of things that just get into your mind. And it did with me as well. Like it was a really hard transition. It took some time to learn how to navigate this world. It took some time to figure out how to get to the point that I am now in business, and also learn to put some armor on within it and just be like, I'm just going to kind of pack and protect and just keep moving forward with it. But nobody trains you how to do that. They just think it's going to be easy. Everyone says like, you can like that, right? We'll be rich overnight. And I've yet to meet someone who did it like that. And I've been doing this now for around 25 years,
Right.
more. Like I've never met an overnight success story ever.
Yeah. You'd think that logic would come into play with something like that, because if it were easy, why wouldn't everybody be doing it?
Exactly.
Just ask yourself some very common sense questions, and you're going to realize that it takes time, it takes effort, and anything worth achieving in life does. Podcasting is one of those things too, and we'll use this as our segue to start talking about podcasting. I want to meet the person that told anybody that this was easy, that you just turn on the microphone and you hit record and now you're ready to go and you're going to change the world the first day. Because I think that's the mindset that a lot of people carry into the first day. Okay, podcast isn't live. I'm out there for 3 hours, and they go look and there's a handful of listeners. Well, that's not good. Well, why isn't everybody? No, you have to take the time to truly establish yourself as a good podcaster that cares about your craft, that wants to get better at having those great conversations and making genuine connections, using podcasting for everything it can bring you. But ultimately for the audience, you have to prove that you're going to be there. One time, it's not enough. It takes a lot of time. And Jan, I know you shared with me, you're on episode 262 of your podcast, or right around that area?
Yeah, 262 just came out. Yeah.
Let me, if no one else has done so yet, let me be the first to congratulate you on getting to that number, because when you hear the number, I know last week when we had crew from season 1 of my podcast, Let's Blow This Up, Jay Franzi shared that he had just read that the number did say that 90% or 95% of podcasters don't get past 7 episodes.
Yep.
But he had recently read that number had dropped to 5. And that just blows my mind, because no one, even the most successful podcasters in the world, were not successful after 5 episodes. So whoever planted this idea in your head, or in their heads, that this is going to be the quickest gain in your business or in your life, even if you're doing it as a hobby, really sold some very, very garbage advice. And it blows my mind that people buy into
Magic beans. Yes.
Right? Come on now.
Yeah. I started my show in December of 2020, and I started it because I was told I had to have a podcast, a blog, or a YouTube channel. And I was like, I don't want to do YouTube. I have no interest in editing the videos. I don't really want to sit and write. So I like to talk. So I'll do a podcast. It sounds easy. And I had no idea what I was doing when I started it at all. I've gone through 2 rebrands since then, and now I have a really successful show, but it did not start that way. Like
Yeah.
it was a stinker for the longest time.
Mhm.
I don't think it necessarily was content. It was understanding how the platform works, understanding SEO, understanding how to get the right guests on the show, how to show up, the consistency, right? That part of it as well. There was a part where I was a stage in my podcasting where I was doing 3 episodes a week. And I did that for a very long period of time. And it almost drove me into the ground. You want to talk
Yeah.
about burnout, like that was content burnout, like try to keep
Mhm.
up with that. So the success, I think, comes from putting in the reps and pivoting and learning and getting better at it, and looking at your own game tape and listening to your show, and listening to other people who do things that you're like, I would love that show. What are they doing that's so unique, and how can I draw that in? And I love this community. Like, it's my favorite thing I've ever done in my career is podcasting, and I will never stop doing it. But it was not easy to get here. Like, that was not it was not overnight in any way, shape, or form.
Not at all. I
No.
mean, and I can tell you from my own personal story, I did radio in college and thought that the transition was gonna be this easy flip. Oh, I did radio, just turning the mic on, it's just recording it in a different platform. Now, no, 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 no. It was a completely different animal. And a lot of it, I think back, the radio show I did, it was just a little college show that I had. I'd have friends come in that were on sports teams and I'd do some interviews, but I'd play music. And there was there's a big difference between those little 2 to 3 minute monologues that you do when you're just doing a radio show versus carrying on a conversation. And that was when it really hit for me, was that this is all about storytelling and conversations. And when you start implementing the skill sets of being a good conversationalist into your podcast, that's when you can start to make some progress and you can really start to get good at what you're doing. For me, it's all about active listening. One of the big reasons why I wanted to do Let's Blow This Up in unscripted format, as well as Let's Blow This Up live in unscripted format, is this is all about conversation to me. I love the ability to just sit with somebody and talk. And personally, I feel those are the best podcasts to listen to, because when you go and you listen to a Joe Rogan 3-hour marathon of a podcast, you're engaged the whole time because the conversation is so engrossing.
Mhm.
I'm not planning on going 3 hours at any point on here at any time soon, but at the same time, for me, I was dedicated to getting better at what I was doing. And even though I had that naivete when I first came in, my first episode, I did this before on radio, it'll be fine. And then when I humbled super quick, I said, okay, I've got a lot of work to do, but I love this. This felt good. This felt natural. This took me back to that radio experience that I love so much. But I was very keen to the notion that, boy, dude, you've got some work ahead of you if you're going to make anything out of this. And 10 years later, we're here. Roughly 10 years later, we're here. But I feel like I've progressed a lot, but it wasn't because I just snapped my fingers and said, okay, I'm going to do podcasting now. It's because I dedicated myself to getting better at it every single time I turned on my microphone.
Yeah, it's a craft, and I think that's one of the things that we forget about content creation, because again, you were told we have to do this and we have to do this and have to do this, but there's no talk about the why behind it, or no appreciation for the art of itself. And I think podcasting is an art form. We've all had it, right? We've had people who are guests on the show where you're trying to tee them up and you're doing all the things, and it's just like crickets, and you're like, okay, well, that was a great 10-minute episode that I won't air ever, type of thing. Or you've had conversations like, you're a repeat guest on my show, and I love having you on my show because the conversation is so natural and everything you say is full of value. My audience always goes nuts in DMs after I air an episode with you on it. So it makes me look great too, because I'm like, this is a quote, these are my people. This is who I know. These are the people I hang out with. So knowing, again, I think the strategy behind how to have a really good show is something that's worth putting more time and investment into, and learning, even like understanding SEO and how to name episodes and just mastering the format. It's something that I think we all should spend more time on when we have a show.
No, there are a lot of moving pieces. There's no doubt about it. And First, thank you. I appreciate coming on your show, and I love the comment. I've made 2 guest appearances now, I believe,
Yeah,
and
too.
I had
Yeah.
fun. I had fun both times, and I'm always happy to come back and make a hat trick out of it and do a 3rd appearance. I love the fact we're able to just have genuine conversation, like I said. And my mindset whenever I'm going on another podcast is that I'm not here to sell. I am here to bring value to this podcaster and to their audience, because I know what it takes to captivate an audience and get them to listen to your show, watch your show. It's not a sales pitch. It's not an infomercial. No one is tuning in for that. And podcasters, I'll put this message out to anybody that hears this. Podcasters are put in a very tough spot if you are always in sales mode. If you are constantly trying to sell your course, sell your book, sell your product, whatever it may be, instead of just telling stories, bringing value, making genuine connections, giving people advice that they can utilize, you can't win when you do the former. You have to do the latter. You have to be about value. And ironically, what happens is you end up selling without selling when you do that, because the host is going to do the selling for you. They are going to endorse the shit out of you
Mm-hmm.
because you brought so much value to their show and you help them create engaging content that will help them grow. Podcasters need that engaging content in order for listeners to turn to others and say, I just listened to Jan's podcast. It was phenomenal. You've got to go listen to. And then everybody wins when you think value first. If you're thinking the opposite, nobody wins. And more than likely, your episode will get thrown on the editing room floor before it ever has a chance to go live, because most podcasters will say, why the hell would I expose my listeners to a half an hour infomercial where this person did nothing but rage on about how great they are and how great their product is? No one wants to listen to that. It's just
No.
bogus.
Yeah. I heard it said once that the 2 things that podcasters want the most is valuable conversations for our audience and good downloads. And which is exactly because it was a valuable conversation. And so every time I get pitches too, because I get pitched a lot, I'm sure you do too, like, like,
Oh, yeah.
here's, I want to be on the show and what have you. And anytime the pitch involves my book or my, my new course or my new whatever, I'm just like, and delete. I don't even reply to them anymore at this point,
No.
because you're not there because you care about my audience. You're not there because you care about helping them. You're there because you care about yourself, which again goes back to that intention, right? That I talked about before in selling. Where is the intention? And the intention should always be service first. Like we have a gift, we have a set of knowledge base, we should share it. And then if we do that, it earns the right for us to be able to then ask for something beyond the share. We can ask to, for a discovery call, or ask for join my email list, or ask for
Right.
maybe you want to work with me. But we have to give before we can actually receive. And that's the thing that people seem to miss all the time, is they're like, put it out there. Let's treat people well, because it comes back.
I have a line that I used, and it was it just hit me one day, because I was reading a pitch that I got, and I'm reading it and I'm like, am I reading a pitch for a podcast or an obituary? Like, all this is it was like this breakdown, and it was like that long, like this a book of every accomplishment. It's like this person won a spelling bee in 2nd grade and then moved on to getting high honors in their 6th grade. I'm just like, when are we going to get to the part where you're going to tell me what you're going to bring to my show? Because I don't care about your 2nd grade spelling bee.
Yeah.
But I used that line in a conversation with Angie Trueblood. I don't know if she's watching on LinkedIn, but her and we had a call one day. I was talking with her, and I just used that line out of nowhere. She lost her. She was laughing her ass off. She's like, that is the most perfect way to describe how so many pitches are written. And there's a lesson in that, because if you're just spouting off all these great accomplishments that you have accomplished in your life, don't feel bad about accomplishing them, but you got to understand that a podcaster is getting at a minimum 5 of those a day, maybe more, depending on the size of the show. They need to cut through the noise. And I should say, you as the aspiring guest need to cut through that noise. And you need to showcase why you think this show is so good for you. What did you find valuable in it? What did you hear in the message of that podcast that aligns with your values, with your motives, with your message? And then you tell the podcaster exactly what that is and why you can add value to that point. that's going to make you stand out, because so many people are hung up on, well, I've got 6 Porsches in the driveway and I've written 5 books and all of Asia bought my course. And it's just this list of accolades, which again, you should not be looking at it negatively, but you have to understand that's not what gets you the booking. The value you bring to the podcast is what gets you the booking. Then when you're on the show, more than likely some of that's going to come up and you're going to get to tell your story and you're going to get to share how those accolades became real in your world. But trying to use them as the selling point, like you said, Jane, it's just our filtering process has got to the point where we're so inundated with pitches like that, we're just checking them off before we ever get past the first paragraph, and we're just moving on to the next one.
Yeah, 100%. I get pitched all the time by real estate moguls. They're always like, I'm going to come on and talk about my real estate mogulism. And like, whatever. I know that's not a real word, but you know what I mean. And I'm always like, why are you want to be on my show? Like, have you researched my show? Do you know who my audience is? We don't talk about real estate on my show. It's like, none of this makes sense, but okay. So, and it just always blows my mind again. And it's that cold pitching. And also I love the ones where I'm getting now where I'm not like, dear Jan, I'm dear, insert name, or they forgot to replace the name in the script, or else it's somebody else's name that they copied and pasted from the last person that they just did. So, and I'm always, when you see that, you're like, and delete, like, we're just going to move on from here. So like, bless the pitch. Like, we all have to pitch, but we can finesse the pitch a little bit more. So from there.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times too, it's more than just the pitch. You really have to make yourself an active part of that person's community in order to even get noticed. An email pitch alone might not be enough. You may need to be on their social media and drop some comments on the last episode they put out or the last few episodes, and not just bullshit. Great job comments. I mean, real. Hey, I loved what you said about XYZ, to prove that you've listened and that you do feel that this is going to be good for you. Now, there are people that will do this type of work for you. If you're looking to hire agents to do your book, that's one thing. But again, it has to align. There has to be some sort of value there, because like you said, you don't cover real estate mogulism on your show. So why would this person be a good fit? Yeah. The best story I have about this was back when I was doing, when podcast theory was known as Pod Theory. This is my other show. And then the whole premise of that show was tips and strategies for podcasters, so they can utilize them to be better podcasters or better podcast guests, whatever the subject of the day may be. But I had a guy reach out to me with this elaborate pitch about how 4th of July is such a terrible time for dogs because the fireworks scare them and they're hiding under the beds, and they're just so frantic. And I get that. Yeah, that's absolutely true. But he wanted to come on my podcast for podcasters to talk about dogs being scared on the 4th of July. And I was like, buddy, I mean, there's missing the reservation, and then there's being 5,000 yards away from it. You're the 5,000 yards away guy right now. Like, that has no bearing on anything I ever talk about on my show. And at that time, I didn't accept guests. It was just me going solo. Yeah. So another strike against you. It's like, simple things like this can be discovered by listening to an episode and not spraying and praying and hoping that a person that has no alignment with your message will bring on just for the hell of it. Because we're not the savvy podcasters that are utilizing this content for a smart reason are not going to just make an exception because you seem like a cool guy. No, like there has to be alignment, or else it's never going to work.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And for me, my podcast is the most important asset in my business when it comes to marketing. And so I'm very careful about that. I'm careful about the conversations. I'm careful about who gets invited on the show, because again, exactly you said, like, if it doesn't align down to my business strategy, even if I love you, I'm not going to invite you on the podcast. And that's like, I think, again, the difference between people who are like, I'm just going to do it as kind of maybe more of a hobby, than understanding the power that a podcast actually has long-term in business strategy and where it sits. Because again, even if it's something that isn't aligned to a business, but understanding the power of the platform, period, I think that's something that gets missed a lot of the time. And the community behind it. That's the thing that too, Jason, right? The podcasting community is very different than other
Oh,
communities
yeah.
with other types of content. And it's beautiful. Like it's a very lovely place to be in. Wonderful
Mhm.
human beings. It's so real. Everybody is so supportive of each other. There's very little competition. It's not like Instagram or other spaces that are very cutthroat and competitive. Like we're not.
Right.
We want each other to succeed because it makes all of us succeed when we see shows rise, and we can help
Yeah.
each other get up there. So that's what I love so much about the space is the community behind it more than anything else.
I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like when I look at podcasting, and I'm not saying that this type of conversation hasn't taken place outside of this. I just know I've never had it. Never has anyone come to me and said, I can't believe you talked about this on your podcast. That's what I talk about. No one is thinking that way. When it comes to podcasting, we all have our different perspectives and our different points of view that we're bringing to our respective shows. And if they align with somebody else, great. If they don't, also great, because we just create a collaboration opportunity where we could reach out and say, hey, heard you talking about this, and I think we might have something to talk about. You want to come together and make an episode together? And more than likely, that podcaster is going to say, absolutely, I'd love to, because we're thinking collaboratively. We're not thinking competitively. And when
Mhm.
you start to think competitively, that's when things start to completely come unravel, because you're going to miss out on so many opportunities to make a good relationship. And I've always believed, at least, especially when I started using podcasting for my business, that this is the strongest digital networking tool at our disposal. Whether you are a host or a guest or both, you have an opportunity to build relationships in a way that you never have before. And this is one of the big things that I preach to anybody that's thinking about getting into podcasting. First, evaluate your time, see how much you can dedicate to it, because that's going to determine whether it makes sense to start a show or to be a guest first and start building a network of people that you could reach out to when you do decide to start your show and maybe you have more time on your hands. Also, using season formats, but that's a conversation for another day. But if you aren't using the networking feature that is built into this just because it is what this is all about, you are missing the mark. But people do, because they're thinking transaction first. They reach out. Maybe you're good enough to say, yes, I want you on my show. Your story looks good, or your sales look good, whatever sells you as this person being a fit for your show. I've had it happen. People come on my show. You try and get a good conversation out of them. They're doing nothing but selling. They're just trying to get their wares out there any possible way they can. And then when you're done recording and you hit stop, like, all right, well, I'll see you. And they just leave. Like, what the fuck? We could have done so much more if if a person did that for half an hour. I really don't want to talk to them anyway, full disclosure. But if somebody just ups and leaves and doesn't take advantage of that green room, which is the portion of the podcast before and after, that's where you're missing everything, because that could be the next relationship that changes everything, but you never know unless you go and do it with the right mindset.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you 100%. And I've seen
Yeah.
that on my own show too, where people come in and you're like, great episode. And you go to talk and they're like, okay, thanks. And then they're gone. And you're like,
Right.
we just had a thing here, and there we could do more things together and we could talk
Mm-hmm.
about things. But it is that transactional relationship, instead of, again, understanding that this is about community and collaboration and building and conversations, and how can we do business together beyond this.
Yeah.
Or my favorite question I love asking at the end of a show is, how can I help you? How can I support you? And
Yeah.
what is it that I can do for your business with my audience, or the networks I have, because I want you to succeed. I want your
Mm-hmm.
business to be successful. I want your show to be successful. And so
Yeah.
what can I do for you? And that's a really easy thing that all of us can say is, how can I help you? Right? Because and
Absolutely.
again, it's also nice to hear, because you're when I hear it, I'm like, oh, there's so many ways. Like, it's just a nice thing to lean into, be like, thank you for asking. So
Yeah.
we should just think about that again, and staying in that green room and asking that question of, how can I actually help you? What can I do for you?
Yeah. No, I lead off anytime I do a guest appearance with, how can I bring the most value to you and your audience today? And when we're done, it's typically, what's next?
Yeah.
Where are we going from here? Because I know that there's going to be some lag time between when the podcast record or the recording ended today. It's going to be a little bit of a lag before it goes live, because you're probably ahead of schedule. But in the meantime, Want to meet, have a conversation without the task of recording a podcast? What can we do to take this to the next level? Because it sometimes can get a little awkward if you finish the interview and just start selling a person. But if you invite them and say, hey, like, let's put our minds together and see what we can come up with. Maybe there's some collaboration opportunities here. Maybe I have some people that would be great for your show that I could tell them, set them up as a guest. I once had a guy set me up with 5 different guests just because he had that type of collaborative mindset, because we started talking afterwards. He's like, what would you think of this person? Would they be a fit? Would this person be a fit? And all of a sudden I'm booked for the next 5 or 6 weeks. Like, hell yeah. I'm always about working smarter, not harder. So yeah, if we can lean into that in everything we do, it's word, it's value. It's being value driven. If that's what you're coming to this platform with, you're going to succeed. Mm-hmm. If you come to it with unrealistic expectations and you're just looking to sell, I got some bad news for you. It's just not going to work.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, 100% agree.
Let me ask you, Jan, because I know you talked about this before with that toxicity that we're seeing on social media. This is shifting back, and it's sort of another nice way to shine the spotlight on how great podcasting is, because this community is completely different. That toxicity that people have experienced through social media, do you feel like that has caused some of that social media burnout? And people looking at it now saying, you know what? I don't even know if the big one seems to be Twitter. I refuse to call it X. Ever since that became X, holy Christ, that become a cesspool. But overall, I feel like social media in general, I don't know if it's because we're seeing less of the friends posts, family posts, like we're seeing more algorithm-based posting now, ads nonstop. This is what this is now. And we were talking before we turned the mics on or turned the camera on tonight that it was a smart move for them to build this up over time and basically act like drug dealers, getting us addicted to this platform or all these platforms and how they can work, but then pulling the rug out from under us and saying, well, now you got to pay us if you want those kinds of results. But overall, do you feel like that's led to a lot of this burnout that many people are experiencing?
I think so. I think a lot of it too has to do with, again, this belief system of not being able to separate out social media from business. And so looking as though our social media platforms are our business instead of seeing it actually as a tool within a bigger picture. So, and I always talk about that all the time, especially Instagram is my audience's bane of existence. So most of the women I work with, it's always fighting the gram, always fighting the algorithm on there, always trying to like, why am I not getting reach? I had reach. And many of us did. Like I was in the boom, of 2021, 2022. It worked great. And then it kind of slowly started going down. And now I'm like, because I talked about it on my show, I'm making a full exit off of Instagram because it's just, there's no point being there. And for me, when I look at the ROI, there's no reason to be there. Right. But it's, again, when we look back, and I think back to when I first started using social media for business, I was doing it for charity at the time. And I was one of the first people to start introducing social media into charity marketing platforms and marketing business plans. And everybody thought I was crazy to do this. Or like, well, why are you doing this? And I was like, because this is a new way for us to reach audience. And it's a really great way. It's not going to be the only way. We're not going to give up direct mail, and we're not going to give up galas and, cocktails and doing the things that we do where we rub elbows and work a room. But there is a new audience there that can be reached. And that audience, I don't think it's there anymore. My audience, I think the women I work with, all of us are feeling the same, that we show up and we do the things, and we're all so sick and tired of it by the end of the day. Yeah. We're not on it. We're not looking at it. We're listening to podcasts. We're reading books again. We're out in the real world networking. We're going to conferences and looking at people and feeling connection and inspired by what we're seeing, instead of just looking and being like, I'm going to just hate like every single post that scrolls through here because, they've got a bigger following or they have this or they have that. And the comparison syndrome just got out of hand. So I believe that we're going to see an end to social media and in how we've known it probably within the next year or so. And there's going to be a big shift into different forms of content. And my prediction is podcasting is going to blow up in a really good way, not in a negative way, but in a very good way, that we're going to see a lot more people move into, I'm going to create really meaningful shows to share what I know and use that to drive my business forward,
Mhm.
or to drive my mission forward or my voice forward or my authority forward. But I think you're going to see more and more people like taking a step off of Instagram for business. Like people,
Yeah.
influencers will still be there, that will still exist, but
Mhm.
business, we're kind of like, thanks, but I'm going to step out of here.
Well, especially with the versatility of this content that you can create in podcasting, because you're covering a lot of bases, audio, video. You can transcribe it for all of the written portions if you want to use it for social
Mhm.
media, fine. But you've also got blogs and webinars and emails and all of these ways that you can communicate. Where social media, first of all, that term you're talking about it changing and going away as we know it. I think that term is going to need to change, because what's social about this anymore? This is all about screaming at one another, whether it's through a megaphone as an advertiser or in the comments section. It's like people can't just have a genuine conversation. This is the stupidest thing. I stopped it today. It's like I shook my head. I'm like, I'm the messenger here. Like literally, okay, I like pro wrestling. This is 2 weeks in a row now. I've had to admit that I like pro wrestling.
I still like
And
you. It's okay.
in some thread, somebody was talking about one of the big controversies right now is Ric Flair, who, for anybody watching that doesn't know, one of the legends of all time. He's having some real problems in his old age, but there was this viral video of him berating a bar manager because he was hammered, and apparently the bar manager did something, yada, yada, yada. Somebody made a comment, and I decided to comment that, there's a very influential wrestler who could potentially help him. He's done a lot to help wrestlers that were at very bad points in their life. And I had said maybe he could step in, but I doubt he'd listen, because Ric Flair in his documentary talked about how he got right out of rehab and went to the bar. So I don't think he'd be willing to listen. So I was basically just correcting myself, saying it would be nice if this guy could step in, but doubt anybody or doubt Rick would listen. And some guys started arguing with me. But like, well, that's not how it works. How would you know? I'm like, dude, I'm just relaying what I saw on a shitty documentary. I don't have any skin in the game here. Why are you arguing with me?
Yeah.
It was just, I'm just like, this is the world that I'm in right now. Like, I can't even leave a genuine comment, and this guy's starting to fight with me. Like, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
What is social about that? Like, that to me is where I look at all of this and I just wonder, what can I do to make better connections and communicate better? And the answer for me has always been podcasting. I'm always going to choose podcasting first. Social media can be utilized to raise awareness, hopefully start some good conversations on the right networks. But a lot of times people just don't want that. They just want to troll. They just want to be bitter. They just want to bring negativity to it. And that to me is what is going to continue to erode this thing down to practically nothing.
Yeah. And I think that's why maybe I'm hopeful that podcasting will be part of making that change, because the people who have something worthwhile listening to are not going to take the time and like those who don't have something worthwhile listening to are not going to do what we do. Like they're not going to be showing up and putting in the reps and looking at download numbers and trying to figure out how to make SEO work in our favor and how to have like real relationships. And they're not going to pick up a mic and start screaming into it, because
Yeah.
it takes work, right? Like this again, it's work, it's an art form, it's a craft. And that's not really kind of this genre doesn't attract that to it. And whereas it's pretty easy for anybody to pick up a phone and be like, I'm just going to say something in the comments. And,
Right.
and it's just an easy out. So I don't know, like there's a lot of things I could say about it, but I'm hopeful. Like I really am hopeful that we're going to start to see a bit of a shift back in civility, and being human and being kind and being thoughtful. And we don't have to agree with everybody. Like, like you don't need to agree with me, but you also don't need to attack me just because you don't
Right.
agree with me. We can
Yeah.
respect each other and say, we agree to disagree. It's just what it is, but we're still going to be civil
Yeah.
and kind and polite and human with each other. And that's what we're missing, is the humanity back. And that a lot of it, unfortunately, I think comes from the fact that we have to do so much of this and we're not in the same room with each other. There's been such a separation for so long from looking someone and seeing someone in the eye and how their body language is and how they really act. You can read people differently in the real world than you can online. It's very hard to
Right.
mask who you are in real life, and it's very easy to mask who you are online. It's very, very
Very,
easy to pick the best shot. Yeah.
very true. There's nothing stopping you from setting up an account, or you just use that to troll people.
Yeah,
That's what,
exactly. Yeah.
if that's your
Yeah.
cup of tea. But
Yeah.
no, I feel like we are just in a world where we we used to have those different point of views, but that's what drove us to innovate. That's what drove us to find new solutions. There was always an ability to have some common ground, even if
Mhm.
we didn't fully agree, because we could be open-minded enough to see somebody else's perspectives and hear their thoughts and let me know why you feel that way. I'm going to tell you why I feel the way I do, and let's just put those ideas together, and maybe there's a way that we can reach a compromise, or if we don't reach a compromise, like you said, Jan, agree to disagree. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. We don't have to hate one another for that. And that's where I feel that to get the most out of what social media was for, because again, I think back to what they were saying when I watched that Social Dilemma documentary. That wasn't like these like buttons and all these things were not made with ill intent. It was made to drive positivity. We just took it and completely shaped it the way that we wanted to. And now it's led to way more problems than we need in our world. And
Because
that's
humans are
sad.
stupid. That's why we ruin everything.
Yeah, I
That's what
know. What the hell is wrong with all of us?
I know. Yeah.
We need to get back to being friends, and that is my horrible segue into
That
wrapping
was a good
things up by
segue.
asking you, right? We talked before, so we're both Friends fans. Who's
Yes.
your favorite character?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna have to say probably Monica. I think that she's my
Yeah.
favorite character. Yeah, I've always appreciated Monica, probably because my closet looks like Monica's closet and my house looks like Monica's house. So I think that's why I probably appreciate her so much. So,
That's a good one. I
yeah.
mean, I guess sticking in that same story path, Chandler was mine, and
Yes.
that was I gravitated to that character from episode one. Just that sarcastic delivery. I'm like, that's my God, that's me. Maybe
Yeah.
not as eloquently, but that dude's got it. That character just that I hung on to everything that character did for that full run of that show. When I heard the news, that was when I heard the news about Matthew Perry passing. That's one of those ones that every now and again there's a celebrity or someone that you've never met but still played a pretty active role in your life. When you hear it, you're
Mhm.
like, oh,
Yeah.
damn it.
That one hurt. Yeah. I would
Kobe
agree with
Bryant
that.
was biggest for me because he was my favorite basketball player through his whole career. And then Matthew Perry, that was another one. I was like, oh man, because you just spent so much time watching and getting invested in the character that this guy brought to life that, oof, losing him sucked,
Yeah.
especially at
Yeah.
such a young age too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
Yeah,
what I love about the memory of Matt, and what I hope people remember him for, is for being so vulnerable with his struggles and for being so helpful to people who are in the same boat. And that's what I think we go back
yeah,
to talking about being true humans, which we're flawed and we don't do things right all the time. And we all have our crutches that we rely on, and no matter what it is. But admitting to that and being able to be honest and transparent and be able to use what maybe isn't the best of us to help other people, that is humanity to me. Like that is what that's the epitome of philanthropy, of stewardship, of goodness, is that. And so that's what I like to remember. And I think I'll always remember Matt for that, is that he was just a really truly raw, good human being who was just trying to figure it out. That's what it was. And he was so funny, right? And that
yeah.
gift, he left us with that. Yeah.
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 Yeah, absolutely. No, I and reading the accounts from everybody else that talked about what he did, I think a lot of them really leaned into that part of it, that he was just such a good person and he had gone through a lot, but he was utilizing his own experiences to try to help others. And that was big. That was very big. And that of course transcends television. That's what it's really all about. And so these people make more of an impact on real life scenarios than just what they did through a television camera. So
Yeah.
there's there's
100%.
there's
Yeah.
there's a big lesson there. So overall, were you happy with how that show ended? I always like to look back, and the analytical side of me makes me always wonder, could they have done a couple things differently with that show? I don't know if they really could have done much differently. I mean, if Ross and Rachel didn't end up together, spoiler alert, right, I don't think anybody would have been happy. I think it had to go that way. But your
Yeah.
thoughts?
No, I agree. I think like that final episode was so like I still cry watching it. And I think when I have a half sleeve tattoo on my arm, and when I went for it was 3 sittings to get it done, and it was Friends that they played in the background while I was going through it, and so I
Yeah.
like binge watched all like seasons as I was getting it done, and it was the last season, the last show for the last sitting, and I still remember crying watching it. Even and I've watched it 7, 8, 10 times at this point, and I still always
Oh,
get
sure.
that like it's so beautiful. And it was such a unique show and so different at the time. And we've never seen anything like it on air ever since. And so I think it was just it was the perfect collaboration, the perfect start. I remember when it first started, it was actually in a bar. It wasn't in the coffee shop. Like the very first episode, the pilot, they had it in a bar, and then they transitioned it into the coffee shop. And I always remember that because there was only one episode with that. And I always thought that was really interesting, is that was the original pilot, was we're going to do it in a bar. And they were like, no, 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 that's not the place for these conversations. Let's do it into a coffee shop.
I you're in Canada, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe you saw it different, and I because this is how I remember the bar part. I remember the pilot being mostly in the coffee shop,
Yeah.
but there was an episode that had flashback to them, and that became Central Perk used to be a bar.
Maybe that's it. Now I'm going to go Google it after this and send you a message.
I'm pretty sure, because there was an episode that I think it was before Rachel entered the picture. It was what they were doing prior to her coming in the coffee shop that one day, but they all talked about going to the bar, and that was the bar, but that became the coffee shop. Remember, they were like, what are we going to do now this bar is closing? And they
maybe that was it. Yeah. Anyway, I know there was a bar there somewhere. So now I'm going to go back and watch the show.
And that's and I wouldn't expect it to be different in Canada, but I know that I read that because the first episode, like most of it was just them sitting around in the coffee shop talking about all these different things happening. Ross came
and then
in
Rachel coming in soaking
Rachel
wet
coming
down
in.
Yeah.
But I do remember, and we'll wrap up on this story. I would, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, the MLM vibes. I had just moved to Pittsburgh, and I was walking into Best Buy to buy a CD or DVD or something, and this guy just like bum rushed me about, I had on a shirt and tie from work, and he's like, "Oh man, you're dressed up good. Where are you going?" I'm like, "Yeah, just leaving work, man. Like, what are you doing?" And he started talking to me about this opportunity that he had, and blah blah blah. And I was like, "Well, what is it?" So he ended up telling me more, and it was like ironically, this like online shopping thing that back then I couldn't see, but Christ, now it's Amazon, now it's Instacart, now it's all these things. But I remember him wanting to meet me for coffee, and he picked this night. It was a Thursday night, and I remember looking at my clock going, well, I'm not going to make it back for the last episode of Friends if I go to this thing. And I also don't care about this thing, and I don't trust DVRs yet, so I'm just going to not go. So I stood the dude up and did not get into that network marketing opportunity so I could watch the last episode of Friends live and not worry about it being taped. I didn't try. Like I said, if the DVR screws up, I'm going to miss this moment. I don't want to do that. I've invested too much time in the show to miss the final episode.
There you go. Yeah, probably a good decision all around.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, in the grand scheme of things, I think it was. But Jan, this has been so much fun. I'm so glad you're able to join me tonight. Let the Bomb Squad know how they can connect with you and get more value from the world of Jan Ditchfield.
Thank you. Well, you can find me on the interwebs at janditchfield.co. My podcast is called No BS Business School. You can find me on the gram at janditchfield.co. And then I have a free guide if you're looking to learn more about lead generation and how to do it more effectively for your business. You can grab that at janditchfield.co/guide. And I'm just all over the place, but my podcast is probably the perfect place to start.
I highly recommend it if you want to start off by listening to more of me and Jan. You can find my lovely voice on was it 262?
261. Yeah, number
261.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember the other appearance. That one was probably back
I don't
in the
remember
100s
either.
somewhere. But anyway, I highly recommend checking out all of Jan's content And again, thank you so much for joining me here. We're going to have to do this again in the future.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Glad you could be here. And for everyone in the Bomb Squad, tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, Wednesday at 8 o'clock. I will be joined by my main man, Wiley McGraw. That is going to be a conversation that you do not want to miss. Trust me. I'm probably going to say that every week, but I mean it this time. So thank you very much for tuning in to Let's Blow This Up Live, episode 2. I'm your host, Jason Sircone, and until next week, be explosive. See you, everybody.